Put your pencils down, class. It's time to share the answers for the Video Games 101 2024 End of Year Final. After the professor and his TA share the answers, I'll reveal the average score of the exam. Plus, we'll choose one game submission at random from the students who passed the final, which will hold a future Video Games 101 class on. And now, Professor, over to you for the first answer.
I asked in our class on Super Dodgeball which of these characters was not in our recommended top 3. If you answered Mike, you would be correct. While he's got great hands, his power shots leave something to be desired.
And now over to Gary for the first boss-related answer.
Right, I asked which boss from the original MSX2 version of Metal Gear is missing from the NES port. If you guessed the Metal Gear itself, you're right. Big head scratcher, but yes, the NES couldn't handle the Metal Gear, so they had to swap it out for the much lamer supercomputer and a handful of baddies.
Seems like a trick question, but no, there was no Metal Gear in Metal Gear. Blaze?
Alright, I asked, what did I call my item of the game in the original TMNT game for the NES? The hint was bow nose, as in Beau Bridges. If you guessed scroll weapon, you are correct. A very powerful weapon for making TMNT a lot more manageable.
Don't roll those eyes, Christian Slater. Bow nose, and so does Fluff.
I asked which was the first game from the Mac Venture series to be ported to the NES. If you guessed Shadowgate, you are correct. And as I mentioned in that class, while this was the third game to be released in the Mac Venture series overall, it was the first one to make it to the NES.
And every one of those games is worth your time. Back to you, Professor.
I asked which game did we hold a class on in 2024, which featured Doc Lewis as a special guest TA. This one was a little tricky, but if you guessed NES Volleyball, you are correct.
That's right, 2024 was the key part of that question. Gary?
I asked which game features a recurring boss, which I recommend that you avoid altogether. If you answered Kung Fu Heroes, you're correct. The Unigon is a very powerful boss, which appears on certain stages now and again, and unless you have a very specific ability, it's best to avoid them until they leave the screen and you can move on.
Like I said before, if Gary's telling you to run, I want no part of that fight. Blaze?
Alright, I asked what did I call my item of the game in River City Ransom. If you guessed Dragon Feet, you are correct. Feet of Fury knock out your opponents before they even get a shot off. I love the Dragon Feet.
Pair it with the Texas Boots to make your feet registered weapons. Fluff?
I asked which of these events only exists in track and field because one of the developers had a crush on a particular athlete of that event. If you guessed javelin throw, you're correct, and that athlete was Tina Lilek, the Olympic silver medalist of the 1984 Games.
Love can make you do some crazy things. Back to you, Professor.
I asked which did we decide was a more fitting name for the game in our class on Milon's Secret Castle. If you guessed Queen Eliza's needlessly annoying collection of impractical, obstacle-filled rooms, you would be correct. And who could argue with that name? Except for probably Hudson Soft.
I would have accepted Hudson Soft 8's children if I were in charge, but I'm not.
The question was, which Robot Master do we recommend beginning with in Mega Man 2? If you guessed Metal Man, you are correct. Metal Man has the best weapon in the entire game, according to Blaze and everyone who plays the game, so good to get this weapon early. Even Metal Man himself is weak against this one, so make sure you use it in the Boss Rush version of him.
Weak to his own weapon, you gotta imagine Metal Man is pretty careful shaving in the morning.
Alright, the question was, what did I call my item of the game in Milon's Secret Castle? You are correct if you guessed Excalibur. The bosses in that game are quite a handful. Powering up your bubbles, your offensive weapon, that's the way to go.
Not sure how King Arthur's sword could be applied to a bubble, but Fluff?
I asked, besides Larry, which of the Koopa Kids / Koopalings isn't named after a musician in Super Mario World? If you guessed Morton Koopa Jr., you're correct, as he was named after Morton Downey Jr., a television personality of the 80s who pioneered the trash TV genre.
And no relation to Robert Downey Jr., before you ask.
I asked in our class on Star Tropics what was the 3-digit code you had to input into the submarine midway through the game to continue playing. If you guessed 747, you are correct. Back in the day, you had to figure out that you had to dip the physical letter which came with the game, hopefully you had it, into water to reveal that code. Today, we can just ask Fluff.
Yes, we can, and we're all better for it. Gary?
I asked in Shatterhand which boss did I give the toughest boss award to. If you guessed Infernon, you are correct. Between the stage he appears on with that conveyor belt and his tricky moves and very small window you can attack him in without taking damage, Infernon is more than a handful in the game Shatterhand.
I got trapped on an elevator once with Infernon. It was not a good time.
Alright, I asked in the Three Stooges, what did I rank as the best space to land on? Don't overthink this one, class. If you guessed the $sign, you are correct. Instant and free money. We'll take that every time.
Occam's razor, class. The simplest explanation is oftentimes the right one.
I asked which of these games, which we did a class on this year, features an obscure reference to a Japanese television show which got lost in translation and Western players totally didn't get. If you answered The Goonies too, you are correct. They dropped the context, but they kept the Eskimo.
And you just know that Eskimo kept some 90s kids up at night thinking, what's the deal?
I asked in this calendar year of 2024, how many games did we do classes on where Fluff claimed that the Western or American version was more difficult than its Japanese counterpart? The correct answer is 3. And to name those games, Bayou Billy, Ninja Gaiden 3, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And if you got those, give yourself an extra pat on the back.
That question was just mean.
Alright, this was a tricky one, but the question was, not counting the no narration playthroughs on this channel, how many classes in 2024 here on Video Games 101 did I not appear in? The answer is 8. And for those figurative bonus points, let's see if you got this right. Tetris, Baseball, Super Dodgeball, The Three Stooges, Goonies 2, Volleyball, Yoshi's Cookie, and Pinball were the 8 classes I did not appear in here on Video Games 101 in 2024, but I'm not complaining. We can all use a little break now and again.
If that last question was mean, this one was diabolical.
Alright, I asked in our class on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who or what did I award the most annoying enemy of the game to? If you guessed Barrels, you are correct, but I wouldn't blame you for blunking this class out of your mind.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica. Fluff, take us home.
I asked in Super Metroid, what is the secret message the Yavir spell out based on their movement in Dragon's room ahead of facing that boss? If you guessed Kiko Love, you are correct. What a sweet message of love from one programmer to their significant other. I wonder if they're still together.
Probably not. It's time to take a look at the results for your Video Games 101 2024 End of Year Final. Over 100 students took the final and received an average score of 42%. Geez, maybe we need to grade on a curve next year. Only 7 students passed with an 80% or better, and as promised, each of them was able to make a submission, one of which will now be chosen at random to receive a future Video Games 101 class. Those submissions are Snow Bros, EVO Search for Eden, Destiny of an Emperor, Deadly Towers, Adventures of Lolo 2, Super Mario Bros. 2, the Japanese version, and Terminator. Let's spin the wheel now and find out which game will receive a future Video Games 101 class. And the winner is Adventures of Lolo 2. Look for that class in the first quarter of the upcoming Video Games 101 curriculum. Thank you to all the students who participated in the final exam, and let's have a great 2025 on Video Games 101.